I'm Idiotech, and this is my review of For Honor for PC. The game retails for $60 and is brought to you by Ubisoft. So what is For Honor? Well, fundamentally, it's a multiplayer-focused PvP medieval combat game with 4 multiplayer modes. It also has a single-player campaign, it has microtransactions, a ton of problems when it comes to multiplayer connectivity, it has some cheesy environmental kill systems. It's got problems. Now, that being said, it is a very, very enjoyable gameplay experience. The core gameplay loop, the combat system, is stunning. It's excellent. I have never played a medieval combat game as enjoyable as this one. It works like this. You can block and attack in 3 directions. You have to predict your opponent's moves to try and counter them. You can parry, you can guard break their blocks, you can feint attacks to try and trick them and then hit them quickly with a light attack from another direction. You have combos. Every one of the 12 characters in the game have their own abilities, which you have to learn and you have to be able to counter. There's environmental kills where you can push people off objects to their deaths or into spikes and things along those lines. In the 4v4 modes, you also have special abilities that you can unlock as you level up through those gameplay modes. They'll allow you to rain arrows down from the sky on your opponents, or shoot a bow and arrow at people, or even throw your sword at them. There's a lot of depth when it comes to the combat system here, and the best comparison I can make is take Dark Souls, take Street Fighter, mash them together, and that's what you have in For Honor. Now, if you're expecting Chivalry 2.0 from this game, do not pick it up. What you get here is a fighting game, a true fighting game experience. If you like Street Fighter, if you like Marvel vs. Capcom, you like Skullgirls, you like Mortal Kombat, if you're a fan of those types of experiences, For Honor is an excellent gameplay experience. The problem is that everything else surrounding For Honor kind of has some issues. Now, aside from the production values, which are stellar, and I must point that out now, it's a great looking game and it runs extremely well on my GTX 980. But aside from the great animations and the great sound design and the wonderful combat system, the game has some pretty serious issues, so let's get into those now. First up, we have the single player. Now, it's okay. It's not a very interesting story at all. There's a bad guy that you don't really care about. You go through 3 separate campaigns for each of the factions, Vikings, Samurai, and Knights, and then eventually you fight the bad guy. That's it. The world itself is new, it's a new IP, and they don't do a great job in establishing the lore of that universe. I didn't care about any of the characters, and I didn't care about the story at all. What I did care about, however, was the combat system, and I did care about the quality of the AI, and I did care about the boss fights. The boss fights themselves within the single-player campaign are very enjoyable. The overall presentation, the cool moments, things like that, things you expect from AAA single-player campaigns. There's a moment where you fight on a horse, there's another moment where you storm a beach. All of that stuff's really nice, and the combat is nice because the AI is really well done in this game, both in multiplayer and single player, but I just didn't care enough, really, and I forced myself to beat it just to see what would happen, but I didn't care. So if you're picking up this game, the only reason I could suggest you might play the single player experience is just for a bit of a change, a break from multiplayer, or to try and learn some of the characters on a basic level. Next up, we have peer-to-peer connectivity. So this game uses an unusual form of peer-to-peer where everyone seems to host simultaneously. Regardless, there's a lot of problems. A lot of people cannot connect to games, they get kicked from games, hosts are constantly migrating, you'll lose players on your team and they'll be replaced by bots and therefore you lose the game in 4v4 matches. It's not ideal, I have to say, and for a game that really should be a competitive fighting game, it's problematic when your entire netcode keeps falling over, and it certainly does, and if you want proof of that, just go check out the Steam reviews for this game. They're mostly negative, and it's because of these issues. So, personally, I didn't have too many problems, but I have a very stable, solid internet connection. However, I have some friends who've played the game who did have a ton of issues, and basically couldn't play certain modes as a result. So I really hope they fix those issues because right now it's kind of game breaking. Next up, we have microtransactions. Now, some of the microtransactions are purely cosmetic. I have no issue with that, that's fine. If they want to support this game moving forward with free content in the way that they did with Rainbow Six Siege, that's fine. You want to do cosmetic microtransactions to continue the development of the game, I'm fine with that. What I'm not so fine with is the fact that you can upgrade your gear for the 4 versus 4 PvP game modes. Now, in 1 vs 1 and 2 vs 2, gear stats have no impact on gameplay, and that's good because those modes are highly competitive. 4v4 game modes are a little bit more casual, and that's why I think they've chosen to implement gear upgrades in those modes. The problem is, though, is that you can put money into this game, buy gear crates, unbox them, get gear that gives you stat advantages over other players. Now, you may increase one stat while decreasing another stat, and that may ultimately balance out, and it is difficult to comment on the balance of these systems because they are so minute, but in theory, this has the potential to be abusive, and I have a problem with that. I do not think you should be able to augment your stats in any way for money in a $60 AAA game. Another problem I have with the game is its unimaginative game modes. Now, 1 vs 1 and 2 vs 2 competitive battles make a lot of sense with this combat system. After all, it is a fighting game. But the 4 vs 4 modes are very unoriginal. You have skirmish, where you kill each other until you get to 1,000 points. Pretty simple game mode, nothing much to it. You have another mode where it's 4 vs 4 and the first team to win is the first team to kill everyone on the opposing team. Okay, again, not very imaginative. And then you have Dominion, which is capture the points, like in Battlefield or in Call of Duty. It's a very basic game mode. And if you've played games like Chivalry and Mount and Blade and War of the Roses, there's lots of scenario-driven content in the multiplayer game modes in those games. Having your army take a fort and then destroy a catapult, and having cool cutscenes in the middle of battle, it would have been a lot more enjoyable, and it would have fit much better with the theme here. Having Vikings storming like a Japanese temple, and then the Japanese faction having to defend against the Viking faction, would have been a lot more exciting from a gameplay perspective than just, hey, let's capture a point. So I would have preferred it if they'd both offered a competitive 1 vs 1 experience and a more casual experience like Chivalry, where you capture objectives that actually make sense and you're not just capturing orange circles on the ground. It's not very imaginative. I don't want to capture an orange circle on the ground. I want to storm a castle. I want to destroy some catapults. I want to pour burning oil on my enemies or smash through a gate. That's far more interesting, and it fits much better within the theme of this universe. So again, has some problems there, especially on the casual side when it comes to multiplayer. We also have these things called feats. Now, these are special abilities, and as you play in these 4 vs 4 modes, you unlock them. And it's sort of like a temporary leveling up system like you might find in a MOBA. You unlock access to these feats, special powers, they're on cooldowns, and you can use them. So you can fire an arrow at your enemy to instantly kill them, you can throw your sword at them, you can call down a rain of fire arrows. There's a ton of different abilities. Now, in the microtransactions section of the store, you can purchase all of those feats immediately without having to unlock them over time, and it does take a long time to earn those. So again, you could technically find the most optimal set of feats for that character and have an advantage over other people. It treads a very, very thin line between being not okay and being okay, and it's very difficult at this point to judge it because the game's not been out for very long. So again, that's something you might want to keep in mind. Another problem I have with this game is the environmental kills system. You have this very deep, very strategic, very skill-based combat system, and then you have instant kills. And by instant kills, I mean you're standing next to spikes and you're a better player than me, I can press one button and smash you into those spikes, instantly killing you. You're a better player than me and I'm about to die, well, I can just rush you with an unblockable attack and knock you off a mountain. Those kinds of things, I understand why they're there, I understand it's there to make the casual player feel like they have a chance, but it kind of destroys the competitive element. So much so that in 1 vs 1 game modes, people actually agree prior to starting the fight not to use them. If players playing your game are agreeing with each other prior to fighting not to use certain mechanics, that means those mechanics need to be addressed. They ruin the system for me, they really do. I've had modes where I've played with people and it's been great and we all agreed not to use those abilities and we had a great time. And then I've had experiences where people refuse to not use them and you just get continually pushed into spikes or pushed off of cliffs. And it's a frustrating experience, so I hope they address that. I would really like it if they could remove those from the game entirely, but that's likely not going to happen, so it would be nice to see modes where they were not enabled, where you couldn't push people off ledges or push people into spikes. Finally, a complaint I have about the game is the keyboard and mouse support compared to controller. When I first picked up this game and tried to play it on a keyboard and mouse, it felt very unintuitive and I almost wrote off the combat system entirely. I was told by someone else to try it on controller. I did. It was a completely different experience. It felt like I was playing two completely different games. So if you are interested in this game, I strongly encourage you to use a controller or not pick it up at all, because mouse and keyboard support in this game is abysmal. There's a lot wrong with For Honor, there really is, when it comes to multiplayer connectivity, when it comes to microtransactions, gear upgrades, the game modes being kind of unimaginative, not really having enough support for a competitive community there, no replay system, no spectator modes, things like that they could really do with for the 1v1 combat system, and the sort of misrepresentation of the product in the trailers and the screenshots and the marketing material. Because really, at the end of the day, this is like Street Fighter. And if you're a fan of that type of experience, and you really like medieval themes and settings, you're going to have a really, really good time. And me and my friends have been playing this game non-stop since it came out, and we've been having a great time doing 1 versus 1 duels and 2 versus 2 duels. It is a very compelling and enjoyable combat experience, and it's like nothing I've ever played before. But I find it difficult to recommend a product to you that has so many issues right now. So wait for a sale, pick it up when it's like $40 down the road once they've fixed these problems, and I think you'll have an excellent time. If you found this video helpful or useful in some way and you want to support my channel, you can do so in one of 3 ways. The first thing you can do is pick up this game or any other game on Green Man Gaming using my affiliate link below. You'll save some money, I'll make some money. It's a pretty nice system. If you want to support me directly, you can do so on Patreon. You'll also find a link for that below. And if you don't want to do either of those things, that's totally fine. But if you do want to help me, you can share this video, share it with your friends, share it on social media. It really helps the channel grow. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.